Last year, Mozilla Corporation, the creators of Firefox, released their 25-year roadmap, where they've envisioned the corporation, because Mozilla is a corporation, people forget that, in 25 years. And it was a fascinating document because it didn't talk about Firefox, right? It was a really strange thing for the company and the foundation that owns it, that created the Firefox web browser, that earns almost every dime it gets from the Firefox web browser and search engine placement within it. Talk about their future as not including Firefox. I'll list for you the four primary things that they were looking at: open source AI labs, open source audit tooling, which is an artificial intelligence tool, Lilapa AI, and the Data Nutrition Project, which is another artificial intelligence tool. Four AI tools were the future, right? They envisioned that when over the next quarter of a century, Mozilla really wouldn't be making Firefox. They would be focusing on AI tools. And when they made that announcement, the Lunduke Journal covered it, and I pointed to it and I said, "Well, isn't that weird? Isn't that a little funny that the company that exists solely to make this web browser is saying, you know what, we're mostly focused on AI now." And a lot of people thought, "Oh, Lunduke, you're being an alarmist. You're making a mountain out of a molehill here." And why I thought it was interesting is this. Not because I disagree with Mozilla, and I don't get me wrong. I don't really like the uses of generative AI. I think the technology is nifty bo bifty, but I'm not a big fan of non-human created stuff. I don't want to read a book that's not written by a person. I don't want to look at a painting that's generated entirely by a computer. I think there's good uses for generative AI. I think there's many good uses for it, but I think like so many pieces of technology, it gets overused by humanity. We as humans do that all the time. We create a new piece of technology and we overuse it to an extreme degree. I use this example all the time, but it fits. Antibiotics save so many lives. When we started making good quality antibiotics, oh my gosh, saved my life, saved so many people's lives, made lives better all the time. There was a period of time where people were given antibiotics so much. I remember as a kid, you have a cold, have some antibiotics. Yeah, oh, you skinned your knee, here's some antibiotics. That you get so many antibiotics. People would have multiple doses of antibiotics going on at any one given time. And what happened was that you develop these bacteria that were resistant to these antibiotics. So you have these, essentially, they call them super bugs. That were created because we overused the antibiotics, right? Antibiotics were great, massively awesome, but we overused it because we saw, hey, that's a good thing. Let's use it constantly and way too much. It's just what we do as humans, right? And I think the same thing is true with AI. But I digress. The interesting thing here is not that I disagree with Mozilla, that AI is something we should put all of our money into. The interesting thing here is that Mozilla is going head first into the AI world. And what exactly does that mean for Firefox, for the web, the content on the web in general, and for various Linux distributions and open source projects? What is the trickle down effect that we will see because of this? And I want to point this out, that since they did that announcement, was it last October, they announced their 25-year plan. Since they did that, they've really followed through with heavy investment into artificial intelligence, with also some significant investment into advertising. Mozilla is kind of becoming a dual-pronged company with advertising and AI. But they've done a number of things regarding AI in the last year that have really put that as the front and center of their product roadmap. One of which is something called Solo. If you go to what is the website here? Soloist.ai. That is a Mozilla business, right, that they run to generate websites for small businesses. So if you run a small mom and pop shop and you want to have a website with blog posts and logos and a cool layout and all this sort of thing, you use Solo. Now, what is Solo? Solo is just an artificial intelligence website builder. We're seeing similar things come out of GoDaddy and other web hosting companies right now. But the fact that Mozilla is getting into that and saying that they envision most companies not creating their own websites, not creating the content on their own websites, but simply utilizing an AI engine where you plug in some keywords and it creates your logos, it creates your templates and designs and your layout and your blog posts and everything else. So all of the content that your business puts out into the world, or at least most of it, is AI generated. That's how they foresee the future. They put this blog post up just a couple of days ago, or a week or two ago, yes, up on blog.mozilla.org. And it's entitled How Mozilla's AI Website Creator Solo is Shaking Up a $2.1 billion Industry. And it goes on to talk with the people who developed it inside Mozilla about how it's great that people can, just hit a few buttons and use an AI system to create websites, right? Like, okay, all right, fine. A couple of website generators does not destroy the web or anything like that. But it is interesting that is the way that they're going. And they've listed off a large number of these projects that they're investing in, and it's AI just completely across the board. In fact, they recently held, just this last month in August, what they call the Rise25 Awards. And what was fascinating about the Rise25 Awards is that it was just about AI, and it was Mozilla's premier event. So it was the moment when all the Mozilla people get to put on their fancy dresses and tuxes. They hired an actress from Ireland to MC the whole thing. They had music and strobe lights and it was a big awards banquet show. And they held it over in Ireland, and it was just AI. It was nothing but AI. At Rise25 Awards, according to their blog, the future of AI is ethical, inclusive, and accountable. Okay, DEI and wokey buzzwords aside, it was fascinating that they would focus their premier event entirely on AI, on design of AI and AI collaboration and AI potential and AI policies and blah, 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 on and on and on and on. If you go to rise25.mozilla.org, you can see all of their honorees and all the categories of AI advocates as a category, people both advocating for AI and using AI to advocate for like diversity and things like that. Artists, because using AI to generate art. Yeah, because they're really focusing on that. Builders, people creating AI in ethical ways, which mostly means diversity, equity, and inclusion is what they mean by ethical. Change agents is a category. I'm not even 100% sure what that is, but they use the word inclusivity a lot. But apparently change agents is a category that you use AI to change people, or I don't know. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And partners and entrepreneurs, all those sorts of things, right? And again, the thing that really stuck out at me was that they put on a big, lavish, big hoity-toity, everyone gets dressed up, fancy event, put out some videos around it and really talked it up. And it was only about AI. It wasn't about open standards. It wasn't about the web. It wasn't about web technologies. It wasn't about web browsers. It wasn't about the history of the web. It was just about AI solutions, right? Things built that use AI. That's what it was entirely about. and they used their biggest event of the year to focus on nothing but AI. It's fascinating. It's fascinating that we've pivoted to a point where a company that was focused entirely on web browsing has now said, you know what? The future of the web isn't the web anymore. The future of the web has nothing to do with web browsers. It's just AI. And yeah, web browsers might play a part in that. Maybe, I don't know. But it's AI, 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 AI. And this same basic theme is being repeated by many companies, right? We're seeing this from Microsoft with Copilot Plus PCs and what they're doing with GitHub. We're seeing this with Apple with their Apple Intelligence line, which is getting more integrated into iOS and Mac OS. We're kind of seeing this across the board. But why I think it's worth really calling out that this is definitely a thing that's happening at Mozilla. Like this is their stated strategy that they're following through on, and they're proud of it, right? So, okay. So I'm not even here to fight them on it. I'm not here to tell them they have to stop, but I do want to make note that it is happening because there's an effect that this is going to have on a lot of different things. First, if they're not focusing as much going forward on the Firefox web browser, and that's going to make sense. They're going to be losing their cash cow of the Google search engine placement pretty soon, thanks to a lawsuit that's against Google, and that Google is lost or is losing. So that is likely to happen soon, which means there's going to be a lot less funding for Firefox. And Mozilla has already said they're not really thinking about Firefox as a long-term product line. They're focusing on their AI tools and their advertising systems. So which means that for the time being, at least for the next year or so, the primary web engine that we've got that's going to receive significant development is Chromium, is from Google, right? It's variations on Chrome. And we see that with Brave web browser and quite a few others. And I think I'm not alone when I express concern over what happens to a free and open web with open standards and the like when you really only have effectively one engine. I mean, as it sits right now, Firefox is used by, is it less than 3% of web users now are using Firefox? I mean, it's piddling into complete irrelevance already. What happens when Mozilla is essentially dumping it, which they clearly are going in that direction? Well, it seems to me that can't be a good thing overall for open standards on the web. I mean, we do have some positives out there. We like the Ladybird browser project and a few others that are creating new browser engines, but all of those are a little ways off, or a year, maybe 2 or 3 years off from being truly viable. So we're going to have a weird period of time where things could get really dicey in the web and open standards world. And then there's the point of view of what happens when Mozilla leverages Firefox to promote their AI tools and AI services, which is inevitable. I mean, they're already using Firefox to promote like their VPNs, and they've used Firefox repeatedly for advertising systems and ad campaigns for TV shows and all sorts of stuff they've shoved into Firefox over the last several years. So they're clearly going to do that, and I wouldn't fault them for it. They're trying to run a business, and that's how it's going to be. But what does that mean for the various Linux distributions? Because many Linux distributions bundle Firefox in by default as the default web browser because they don't want to put in something from Google. They want to go with the ragtag rebel committed to open source Firefox browser. Yeah, well, that's all changing now. And now Firefox has moved kind of away from that yeah, we're open, and they've moved more towards AI with closed backends and private proprietary training data and lots of advertising and closed source DRM modules. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's what are these different distributions going to do in the meantime? And I think it's It's entirely possible that we see a whole lot of forking going on. And do we see more fragmentation in the browser market share? I'm not 100% certain. I think it's worth looking at, because I think we're about to see a fairly significant shakeup in the browser market, because Google is going all in on AI, Microsoft's going all in on AI, Apple's going all in on AI, Mozilla's going all in on AI. So what we have left is Brave is even pushing towards the AI side of things. I like Brave, by the way. Brave's my current favorite browser, but it's pushing towards AI, right? It's including AI features. So what we have as the only real options that aren't going all AI are a handful of Firefox and Chromium forks, Pale Moon, and a few others, and the future web browser engines that are currently being worked on, like Ladybird. But how popular will those be? How much traction will those gain? And what impact will, when even Mozilla is going all in on web-based content is generated entirely by AI, what does the web start to look like? I mean, already we talk about the dead internet theory, right? The idea that the web is a huge collection of bots and generated content, and bots talking to other bots on social media and blogs and all sorts of things. And so much of the web is already not created by people. And that theory has been going around for years now, and there's a lot of validity to it. The exact numbers, I mean, are debatable, but there's a lot of validity to the core idea that a large amount of content is just not created by people. And I think most people agree that that's a problem. But what happens when Microsoft, Apple, Google, Mozilla, and even Red Hat? Red Hat's gone all in on AI. I mean, most of Red Hat Summit this last year, their big event was mostly about AI. Most of their press releases were about AI and not about Linux. Some of them didn't even mention Linux, they just talked about AI. So, what happens when all of them are all in on AI? What exactly does the web look like? What does social media look like? What does YouTube look like? What does the photo sharing websites and blogs look like? When you go to use a search engine, what kind of results are you going to get? Really think about this here. So Mozilla is launching Solo, and one of their big things with Solo is that it creates a website for a business using artificial intelligence to create content for it, design for it, and whatnot, and custom tailor it to rank higher in the search engines. So when Microsoft is creating content to rank higher in search engines, and Google is too, and Apple is, and Mozilla is, well, all the stuff that's ranking the highest in the search engines is by design going to be not created by people. So finding content that's created by humans becomes increasingly challenging. And I think that's something that we're going to have to wrestle with. So this is something that's worth talking about. I'm not here to bash on Mozilla today, simply to point out the way that things are going, and that it raises alarm bells, right? Lots of little red flags go up for me of the ways this could go poorly, and I think it's worth noting that that all of these companies are all pushing the web towards something that's not really identifiable as what the web was just a few years ago, and they're pushing it towards something that is entirely AI generated and AI driven. Maybe that's great. Maybe that's the worst thing ever. I know I personally have an opinion on that, but it's definitely distinctly different. And if you or me want a different sort of web, if we want a different sort of human generated content system, I think we're going to have to take a firm stand about that. And I've talked about this before, of having to take a firm stand against AI generated content. And I think that's becoming an increasingly important thing. uh, because it may come to a point where the web is just not a usable thing if you're looking for human generated content. I mean, it already is. If you go to social media sites, you really can't tell what's a bot. Well, you can kind of figure out some of them, but it's just filled with bots. I mean, bots are everywhere. On Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, it's just bot after bot after bot. Blog posts everywhere, bots generating content. There are so many different website AI things out there for creating blog posts and writing essays. And I'm going to tell you this flat out. And I've been harping on this for a while now. If you look out at the tech press, the big tech news websites, way over 50% of what you're reading on most of those sites is AI generated. Way more. I've talked with so many editors at so many of these tech publications that there's just not the money in advertising that there once was for these sites. So they've had to cut back on their more expensive writers. And what they've instead done is they've hired very inexperienced copy editors to feed keywords, articles, and press releases into AI systems that generate articles. They then take those articles, proofread them, so they make sure that they're laid out reasonably and they don't give away that they're AI generated, and then feeds those with maybe a few extra keywords into an image generator and use an AI image generator to create a thumbnail for it. Some of them actually still use artists for this, but then generate the content, the articles with the AI generator, and then just post them. Including in print magazines. There's some print magazines that are going this way, but of the online publications, more than 50% of the content, much more, is AI generated at this point. And I think, and Mozilla is saying flat out, that's the goal, right? They're saying repeatedly that the goal is to create all of this with AI, create the websites with AI and the blog posts with AI and the images and the art with AI. And they hold big award shows for people that advocate for more AI and whatnot. And they're also trying to make sure that AI espouses certain political ideals and not other ideals and whatnot. And it's all terribly concerning to me. I just tremendously don't like it. But even if I did, I would still have to stand back and say, what exactly does this mean? It's worth thinking about. It's worth talking about. I know there's already a tremendous amount of division between people that like the AI and don't like the AI, and a whole lot of people in the middle. But this does need to get talked about a lot more, a tremendous amount more, because the change that we're seeing right now happening at this very moment, and it is exemplified by what we're seeing happening with Mozilla, the creators of Firefox, is tremendous and crazy and more than a little unnerving. Anyway, I want to say thank you to all of the subscribers that helped make the Lunduke Journal possible, to make it possible for me to rant about whatever I feel like ranting about without having to worry about advertisers pulling the plug on me. So thank you to all of you. Lunduke.com, lunduke.locals.com. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you already do, big ol' high five. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.